Welcome to another episode of the Entreprenudist Podcast, the place that we hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. I am your host again, Randolph Love III, and I'm so happy that we're starting doing more of these one-on-one interviews with people. I know a lot of people have been very entertained by our showing the insides of these workshops and what the conversations are, but a lot of times you need to have that one-on-one time and have that conversation with these experts, professionals, and people who are practicing at being perfect. And I have somebody like that on my podcast right now. Hey, please tell people, who are you and what do you do?
You got it. I am Christopher C. Papin. I go by Chris. There's two Chris's in the office. So oftentimes I get the affectionate, the athletic, hey, Papin, what's going on here? Attorney, CPA, carry an insurance license. We position ourselves, our client base, and all of our conversations are talking to small businesses, small business owners, and folks that are adjacent to those industries. Helping people build wealth, helping people navigate, kind of just the real life stuff that there's not really anybody else to talk to. As a business owner, sometimes it's lonely at the top, right?
Mm-hmm. Attorney, CPA, like you're like the super referrer. Like, you know how somebody that I imagine anybody that you refer, those people go to immediately. I also imagine that when people come to you and ask you for your opinion, they usually don't research it. They're like, all right, Chris Papin said it must be true.
Yeah, it does go both ways. The thing that's always interesting on a referral is, I think it especially is true in today's world. You need those validators, like a website, like a domain. If I had cpapin@gmail.com, I bet it would carry a different weight than we've got a law firm at Papin CPA, at Papin Law. So those little validators going along with credentials or things like that, I think are just as important, even though people probably would not verbalize them.
Exactly. And even if they don't realize that it's important, because what you just named out is the difference between having that at Gmail or at something that's custom. And once again, that's one of those things to where you don't realize it until you talk to somebody such as yourself that says, hey, you might not have realized this, but you look at your nose all day. And when I tell people that, they're like, what do you mean? I say, look at your field of view. Do you see your nose? No. All right. Now look down. Yes. All right. So you realize your nose is in your field of view this whole time. Your brain just blocks it out because it doesn't realize it's important, or it doesn't think it's important as far as seeing. It sounds like working with you isn't just one thing for what you need. It sounds like you look at what's currently going on in their business and then you point out things like that.
That's a great way to set it up. Easy for me to say, like a new business owner, maybe a new insurance agent, they're coming to you saying, I need an LLC. I need some guidance on tax and accounting work. How should I be? We know the questions they're going to ask in 18 months. We know the questions they're going to ask in 36 months. We know the question that they're going to ask when their lease is renewing. But to your point, I'm focused right here, not right here, right here. It's subtle. For those that are listening, I'm pointing at my nose and pointing just slightly in front of it. It's important though. In proximity matters and all of that stuff. No different than some of the best athletes out there. You can make all the free throws in practice, but if they don't go down in the fourth quarter, they make fun of you on SportsCenter.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. You're only as good as what you most recently did. Is there nothing that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started doing what you're doing?
Probably two things. The first one is easy. When I was younger, I had a tendency to want to know the answer or be the guy that had the answer. And sometimes being able to say, I don't know, is actually just as powerful as having the answer. So I wish I'd have learned that a little sooner. I had some mentors coach me into that early, but it was still something I kind of carried with me. And then the second is I was very objective oriented is the way I'm going to say it. As a former athlete, I played soccer all my life. I coach soccer now. So, you got 50 some odd years of experience being in that. So it was about winning the game or advancing to the next stage of the tournament. And with a lot of businesses, it's not about win or loss. Sometimes it is, but oftentimes it's about just iterations of being a better version of yourself. And I equate it to practice more so than the game itself. And I think you started here. Someone who's practicing to be perfect. That's the goal, fully recognizing we're never going to be perfect. But every day you got to iterate, you've got to change, you've got to be adaptable to whatever's coming at you so that you are progressing. Because if you're not, people are flying by you, especially in today's technology land.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I share with people, because with the line of work that I'm in, a lot of time, and especially with the duality of my personalities, I encounter a lot of people who are just coming into the business. And I'm also in masterminds, those type of masterminds that cost $20,000 plus annually, of people who've been in the industry for 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years. And then I'm able to collapse that time. Of course, me establishing myself in my industry and being able to pay that money, but also bring people in. And one of the first things that I teach them is that most affluent people, not necessarily counting the people that inherited it, but the people who earned their money, most of them know when you don't know an answer. And most of them are not going to correct you when you say something that's not true. They're going to ask you questions, understanding that it's impossible for anybody to know anything. But when you start trying to answer a question that you don't know and are unable to say that you don't know, it sends a red flag to the front of their brain and the back of their brain to not do business with you. So, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. The ability to say, I don't know, you need to learn sooner than later. No matter who you're working with, but especially if you're working with an affluent person who earned their money and can read body language.
Yeah. In the way you've said that, like there is something inside of folks that have earned because they've been down that path before. And you're absolutely correct about kind of a BS meter, if you will, to put it in different terms. But well, I don't know. Let me pose this as a question to you rather than a statement, because I'd be curious. In working with the folks in your mastermind groups, when they sense that, you've already kind of talked about the red flags, but what is the feedback that they give to you of how they behave when they sense those things?
So myself and them as well, we've learned not to give unsolicited advice. So typically in those scenarios, when we sense that our inner good person wants to give them the right answer and or correct them, right, for whatever, because we know it's about failing forward for whatever engagement that they're going to have in the future. Like, I'm not going to do business with you, but I wouldn't mind sharing with you what triggered me, right? But in those instances, unless somebody asks them or myself explicitly, I'm not going to necessarily say what, I'm not going to voluntarily say what triggered that red flag. I'm just going to, nod and politely end the conversation and move forward.
And I think this sets up what I was hoping to get at. I'm grateful you answered it the way I hoped you might, but client feedback, customer feedback, being able to ask, am I on the right path? Do you have concerns? And being vulnerable to the actual legitimate feedback they give you is really, really powerful, because I think that can create a very good bond with folks. Did I hear you correctly? What I heard you say was most people have been taught manners and don't immediately come in hot and say, hey, guess what? You're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They will just kind of catalog that and move on. Something that simple is powerful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And that is a mistake that a lot of upstarts make. A lot of them, the reason why they're successful is they're going against the grain and not necessarily listen to traditional advice. And when I say actually asking the right people for their opinion instead of just dealing with the unsolicited people. Are there no other common mistakes that you found working with the business owners that you work with? Other common mistakes besides not asking the right people for advice?
There's an interesting paradigm with this statement. Everybody wants to do it differently. And to some extent, those that are the most successful do. But the fundamentals, if you're an insurance agent, it's still insurance. How you approach your customers or how you handhold or how you meet the different sales objectives might be different than the folks you're familiar with. But they don't reinvent something so different that it's not really within a templated platform. So it's always interesting kind of watching those personalities that I'm going to take the world by storm. I'm going to be the next Mark Cuban. Maybe, but last time I checked, there's only one of those guys. And statistically, you can't be him too. It just doesn't work like that. So you've got to balance both sides of that. And I think people that have that perspective usually do the best. Young, old, anywhere in between. I think there's just this common mistake of I can do it better than the other guy because, and sometimes maybe you should have done it like them. You should have just answered the phone one extra time. Everything else in the recipe was right except for one thing. That doesn't mean you got to blow up the whole recipe. Simple, but pretty easy to do.
Oh yeah, pretty easy to do when you have the right supporting staff. So there's something that I like words, right? I'm very into words, and it's my granddaddy when I was growing up. He told me the difference that you got an idiot and then you got an imbecile. An idiot, according to the dictionary, they have the mental capacity up to the age of 0 to 3, and an imbecile has the mental capacity up to the age of 3 to 7, right? And then when you look up the word idiot and imbecile in today's Webster dictionary, they just simply say stupid, right? So as I'm thinking about this, I say, well, I wonder what the origin of the word idiot is, right? So I looked up the origin of the word idiot, and the origin is a private person. Now, really, their definition was a comparison between a public citizen, like somebody in the Senate, and this is Greek, so like the Roman, and then the private people, which the government, I don't know if too much has changed, but they consider the masses idiots, right? So they called them idiots, but it just as private persons, but it just graduated to the word stupid, right? And then I said, well, hold up. So if the origin of the word idiot is a private person, I wonder what the origin of the word imbecile is, because my granddaddy always told me this was progression. I looked up the word imbecile, and the origin definition of the word imbecile is a person without supporting staff. So, and what they're saying is a staff as in a stick, right? But a actual staff of employees, you utilize them to make things work. And even if you're talking about a stick, you can use a stick to hit something. You can use a stick to support yourself. You can use a stick to reach something high. And what I've concluded was you're an idiot or an imbecile if you're a private person without supporting staff. And I'm not even insulting you. I'm just telling you what the original definition of the word. So I said all that to say this. How does a business owner, and how should they correlate the legal, the financial, the insurance? Is there no perfect way of bringing all these things together?
I think your analogy rings true. We're going to thank your grandfather for this one because I owe him one on this deal because he's setting this up. you need folks to help you translate. No different than you just did. Because take legal terms of art. In my industry, in estate planning, health, education, maintenance, and support. That is a term of art. It's 4 words that mean you're going to live like you did yesterday. When people read that, they think hospital or school or maintenance. I mean, what the heck is maintenance to a person, right? Okay, getting my hair cut. So it feels different, but that translation process, having somebody be able to help you kind of cross that bridge of what is that term of art, or, sometimes just as simple as buying a business book that is generic, that can kind of give you some vocabulary terms that other people are using. I'm going to make fun of some clients here. I'm going to ask you a question on the back end.
Yes, sir.
A lot of clients call and say, hey, last year my revenue was $1 million and I feel like I paid too much in tax. And I will say something like, congratulations, you must not have very many expenses. And they're taken back by it. What they meant was my net income. And again, I'm using terms of art inside of accounting, but I set this up in the sense of they said revenue, which is the number before expenses. They meant net. I made a sarcastic remark just to pull out, to figure out the meaning. And some people will laugh at me and say, you got me. Really, I was talking about other net income in some form. Others will say something like, I don't understand what you're talking about, or why are you making fun? I called you to help me. Like, instantly you can tell there's confusion. So in this scenario, and you said it yourself, you're a man of words. Yes. You're also a very intelligent person who's willing to do a little bit of homework. How would you self-help if I said something like that to you? How would you figure out what I meant?
If somebody called me and said, I just paid $200,000 in taxes, and your question is, what would be my response to that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, because the way that I usually, and just so you know, the way my business model works is usually I come in through, just like you said, it sounds like your business model of educating people on estate planning. What I've discovered is if your introduction to somebody is about money, they get defensive. But if your introduction to them is about setting up their doing their estate plan and helping them getting everything organized, they're open. And the benefit is you've helped them set up their foundation. That's their immediate payoff. And the immediate payoff for somebody like me who helps people with business, the exit planning and the retirement, is now I was able to collect the information that I need in order to put together the best strategies possible for you. Right. So usually I don't have that conversation of I paid this much in taxes. Usually people they don't even realize the amount that they're paying is unreasonable. So usually I'm the one that's making that. But if somebody were to come to me and that's how they introduce themselves, like, hey, good to meet you, Randolph. I paid over $200,000 in taxes. My immediate action question would be, for what reason and how? And so tell me what you do. How do you do it? And then I will go from there. But yeah, it sounds like maybe your response might be better. Your response, it's kind of like it confuses them initially. It almost congratulates, because paying $200,000 in taxes is what I call a good problem.
Right.
There are all types of problems.
Assuming you've got the infrastructure to absorb it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Where I was going with this is your approach is education based, which is I think what a lot of planners try to do. Obviously, I'm playing a little bit of a game because I'm trying to extract data from the nonverbal, from the behavioral, which you heard me say, like, hey, okay, congratulations. Most people don't get that answer. But I'm not doing anything fundamentally different than you are. I'm just doing it with a different tact. And I am blunt sometimes when I need to be. Obviously, money and emotion are attached at the hip. They are the same thing. And if you think otherwise, you're nuts. But you can go through these processes. And usually I get folks that are voicing the pain point. And the reason I kind of set it up this way is you alluded to that. Most that are in a scenario that have that kind of payment to make probably don't even know that they paid it. It's just part of the process. Where people get frustrated is, I didn't withhold enough. I didn't plan for it. Oh my gosh, there's this surprise. So sometimes just the timing of writing the check is the difference between success and failure. It's not that we impacted tax. It's that we built it into the cash flow plan, which all assumes a bigger infrastructure. But we've both led the audience through a little bit of a journey here. I'm just generic rhetorical question to the audience, and then we can kind of transition wherever you want to go here. But if somebody came to you and said, you've got a surprise tax bill, what's that threshold that would make you uncomfortable? Do you actually know that answer? Because if you don't, you probably need to spend some time diving in and understanding what's there. Because I ask my clients that, and some of them will be like, oh my gosh, if I have to write a check at all, I'm going to freak out. I don't want to explain to my wife why we had to write a check in April. Why? You don't want to overpay, do you? Would really getting a big giant, like I can control through our tax planning how much of a refund or how much of a payment you get. Wait, you can? That's the aha moment we're looking for. So again, back to the audience, what's that number for you? It's a tough question to ask of folks, but where's that pain threshold?
Oh, yeah. And that actually brings me to my next question for you, because you said something that's very, very important. You said planning. Is there no way for a business owner to future-proof their tax and legal strategy? And in other words, plan accordingly to where they're not calling somebody like me to say, I just got a surprise 200 grand. Nah, because they work with Papin, Chris Papin, it didn't even arise. Is there no way to future proof?
There absolutely is, with the caveat of my crystal ball is broken. I cannot predict the future any better than anybody else. So you do it based off of trends. You do it based off of educated guesses. You set a template in place based on a set of assumptions. And most business owners that I work with, sophisticated or not, know their industry well enough to know that there's a bump in the road. Or, I think of a painter I worked with years ago, and he always advertised when he was busiest, and he never got through his head he needs to advertise right before he's slow. So his chief complaint was, I advertise, I get all these phone calls, but by the time I call somebody back, they've already hired somebody else. And it's just a subtle shift, but that's that forward looking. He just needed somebody to sit next to him and say, hey, advertise at the end of the summer, not in the middle of the summer. That's when you'll start to get the calls. And as you're kind of going into your colder, slower seasons, you can queue up the indoor painting jobs instead of the outdoor painting jobs. But it's no different for financial planning or anything else. Are the assumptions good? If they're not, do you have a meeting cadence, or do you have somebody who is kind of on call? A lot of our clients, we don't necessarily meet every month, but we have standing orders. If one side or the other suspects something is out of bounds, we should be able to meet within 30 days to be able to adapt to it. Somebody gets sick, somebody gets fired. I don't know, God forbid, COVID happens again. All of that stuff. If your business is shut down for 4 months, guess what? Your financial projections are jacked. That's where you adapt and overcome and build a new set of assumptions. It seems pretty easy. It's really hard because we're all guessing. I'm sure you've been in planning and budgeting scenarios where folks are saying, well, I don't really know how to determine this number, right?
Oh yeah, because all truth to parallel is something that's a common trend in my life. And of course, IQ tests, the higher your IQ is your ability to recognize patterns, which that should let you know that everything is the same in a manner of speaking. I know I heard this story once that there were two young fish just floating in the water, and this old fish just came swimming along, and the old fish looked at the young fish and he says, "How you doing, fellas? The water's fine today, isn't it?" And then he just kept right on swimming, and the two young fish looked at each other and they said, "What the hell is water?" Right? They've been in water their entire lives, but they had no idea they were in water until the seasoned advisor informed them that they were in water. And now that they just learned that they're in water, they can act accordingly. I think a lot of people in our industry don't realize that you have traditionalists and then you have multi-disciplinary practitioners. Is there no difference between working with a traditional CPA or attorney versus working with somebody that's multidisciplinary, other than letting people know that, metaphorically speaking, they're in water and to move accordingly?
Yeah, the way I like to phrase it to my clients is there are tax preparation places, compliance-based shops, and those are more of your traditional type models. And then you've got more progressive firms that are trying to be forward-looking and trying to help clients anticipate what's coming at them. I'm going to at least try to describe what water is to my clients. Whether or not they figure it out or not is on their clients. But to call like an H&R Block, for example, and expect a forward-looking service when really they're just in, I say they're just, they have some other forward-looking services too to do them justice. But typically it's, hey, I'm filing my return. And a lot of people look at it as that. A lot of legal compliance, insurance audits. If you've got workers' comp or something like that, everybody gets all bent out of shape. Oh my gosh, I got to jump through all these hoops just so I can pay a bigger premium. No, not really. It's going through those paces that actually help hold your premium down. It's the people that create all of the risk and don't tell the insurance company about it. And then the insurance company is defending that lawsuit. That's when your insurance goes up. That's the stuff you should be frustrated with. But I don't think folks see it like that because it's a tick box. It's not a revenue generator. It's something else I got to do that I don't know anything about or care. So I think finding that balance, because I don't want my clients to be tax experts. I don't need them to be. They're already an expert in their industry, but they do need to know, here's how our return works. Here's why we need to do the planning that we're doing. And here's why you call me in July of 2025 to do tax planning, not January of 2026, because I don't have a time machine either. My crystal ball and my time machine are broken, brother. I don't know what to do here. But it's hard. It's hard in that instance because people don't always have the perspective of what tools do you need when you're going down these different paths. And oftentimes, just candidly, one of the first questions we ask people are, what are your goals and objectives? And I think sometimes we get lost in, my kids got a something and then they got sick, and on the way home from soccer practice, I got to get dinner, and life is playing there. And we forget what our objective is for our business day. When in fact, a lot of the folks that I bet you talk to in the mastermind groups are getting closer and closer and closer to an exit plan that they've envisioned for a long time, but never verbalized and never took steps to build. They knew they wanted it. But what did you do on a Tuesday in 2015 to build to that exit on a Thursday in 2025? That's a fair question to ask of folks. And I don't think they know how. And that's where strategic partners along the way, guys like you and I, can help develop that thought process out, or at least give people some action items so that they can empower themselves to achieve whatever that objective is.
Oh, yeah. Napoleon Hill calls it drift. If you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Right. Yep. And a lot of drifters, as Napoleon Hill described it, aren't typically business owners, but there is a level of drifting where you are a business owner and then you revert back to that drift mentality. And yes, you don't realize that you're drifting. You don't realize that you're in water until somebody explains it to you. So, is it a good idea, or is it not a good idea to bring all this in one house? Right? Should you have your accounting, your legal, and your insurance advice all under one roof?
I would argue from a small business's standpoint, it's powerful to have folks like this because it's one meeting rather than trying to get the attorneys who's busy schedule to figure out what the CPA, what their busy schedule is, and jump through all of those hoops. Obviously, that's advocating for me and folks like me.
Yeah, you're not biased at all.
But here's the catch. I've been just the attorney, or I've been just the CPA for folks. And in some instances, and I'm going to pick on both professions equally. I usually like to rip on attorneys because everybody does. But attorneys will do the planning and then hand it off and tell the CPA, this is how you should report it, with no perspective whatsoever at all about what goes on a tax return. Or a CPA will frame out the numbers and hand it off to an attorney and say, here's how the profit share plan would work, with no perspective whatsoever at all about the risks that they're creating, the potential liabilities they're creating, because we didn't address all of the issues. So this is where bringing both disciplines and bringing folks together so that the client can first understand and then prioritize what they're willing to accept and not. I have certain clients who are willing to accept certain risks. Litigation is not one of them for most. I have certain attorneys who are litigators, and they'll say, oh, we'll get it dismissed at lawsuit. But if the client is never willing to get sued, why are we even having the conversation about the lawsuit? So those are the things where I can see a lot of power in bringing these disciplines together, having kind of a consolidated thought process. And so everybody's clear, I am not the expert at everything. The way I pitch myself as an attorney is I'm a paper pusher. I'm a planner. The minute you go to the courthouse, we are hiring specialty counsel. I'll translate what they just said to you. But no, I'm not going to go to the courthouse and litigate. I can't do all of those things. But as a board member to our clients, if you will, I have a unique discipline to sit next to you shoulder to shoulder and say, hey, when the attorney said when discovery is over, that could be a 6 or 8 month process. That's going to be a document grab. That's going to be depositions where you've got to get interviewed by the other attorneys. There's going to be interrogatories. There's a whole bunch of steps in that, not just, hey, when you finish filling out this email. I mean, that's the beginning, but there's that translation process all over again. So there's layers inside of that, but I think the most powerful one is, what resources do you want and need? If you don't know, I think interviewing folks, like go through a process, interview somebody like me, interview a law firm independently, interview a CPA firm, interview a bunch of different insurance agents. Everybody has a different style. Everybody has a different communication path. I tell my clients I am not a good babysitter. If you are the client that needs 38 reminders, there's 2 paths. You get one email and we'll never do it, or you get one email with automated reminders until you figure it out. Those are the 2 paths. There's not really anything in between, because some folks just need, hey, let me get on the phone with you and do A, B, and C. That's not my style. So maybe you want a firm that does things like that. And that's, a personal question, and sometimes hard to know because you don't know until you've been through the journey. But that's part of the journey. Embrace it. Love it. You can always change. There's nothing wrong with that.
You describe yourself as the person's board member. And so, some people might say, because, a lot of times I got a lot of attorney friends, colleagues, customers, and I've had multiple attorneys tell me in different segments that the reason why they make so much money is because people hate to read. The reason that's what they say. And if you think about it, the people that you want on your board are the people who love doing board work. And when I say board, I mean BORED and not BOAR, because a lot of it can be very meticulous and it's a lot of information. And it sounds like what you're saying is when you're dealing with a company that has all of this under one roof, you avoid, metaphorically speaking, like a game of telephone. You know that game of telephone where you have one person whisper it in the ear and then the next person whisper it in the other ear, and just three people, that message has completely changed from that first whisper. And it sounds like when you're dealing with a multi-disciplinary firm that does all of this under one roof, the legal, the accounting, the insurance, information moves at the speed of light, and it reduces the chances of things getting lost in translation.
Let's be clear. I'm an attorney. Nothing moves at the speed of light. I'm poking fun at all the guys, right? Attorneys always take too long. There's always a problem. But yes, you're right. I do think consolidating it helps that pace. You know, it is the analogy on the telephone game. If I call the client and say the sky is blue, and the client calls back and says, hey, let's talk about that guy that is blue. What? We're talking about the sky, not a guy. But there's the dysfunction of the telephone game. So it's important that you get the right people on the right page. You know, there's what's the book? The right people on the right people in the right seats on the right bus.
Traction.
There we go. Traction. That's what I'm trying to think of. That is incredibly powerful. You don't need somebody to do a deep dive on a document that is an inconsequential document. Like, I don't need to review everybody's clickbait terms of service wrappers. Who cares? You're either using your email service or you're not. And to put this in a light that I think will hit the listeners correctly is we get the question all the time about, hey, this lease is due by Friday. Can you read it and tell me it's good? And my typical response, you guys have figured out there's a little sarcasm in Papin's world, is how about I don't read it, you sign it and assume it's good. And everybody's like, what the heck are you talking about? We need you to read this. What if there's something hidden in there that's wrong? And I was like, that is not what you requested of me. You didn't tell me to read it and point out the issues. You told me to read it and say it's good. I am not willing to take on the risk. I will read it, but I don't know what the result will be. And subtle, but important. And the client doesn't even know they're doing it. They're just wanting to get it done by Friday. And you said in the beginning, people don't like to read. What if the document's jacked? It's not getting done by Friday. There's going to be revisions back and forth. And therein lies my joke about attorneys taking too long. So what do you actually worry about in there? I've got a lot of clients that I've worked with a lot of years. They don't need me to read the whole document. They'll read it and say, we want you to focus on Article 7, 9, and 14. Can you narrow your scope to that? Because we got to get it done by Friday. So a difference between an informed consumer asking their partner to do something as opposed to somebody that's like never done a lease before. Well, if you've never done a lease before, why are we signing it by Friday? That's a bad recipe straight out of the gate.
Absolutely. You're setting up an unnecessary sense of urgency. And when it comes to, there's a reason why marketers set up sense of urgency. You want somebody to make a decision instantly so they don't have time to think about it. And, you know, sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. But especially when you're dealing with long-term lease, a lot of times with business owners is at least 5 years. A lot of times you want to make sure you sign the right thing. And so that actually leads me to my next question. How should business owners think about advice versus compliance services? Is there a difference? And if so, how should they think about these things?
So I like to think about these like layers on a sandwich. So you've got your bread, and that's kind of the compliance-based stuff. Every sandwich is more or less made of some sort of bread or wrapper or whatever it is. And let's just pick a typical sub sandwich type deal. What's in the middle matters. And that's where it's going to change industry, client, personal preference. Are we using ham? Are we using spiced ham? Are we using capicola? The vocab may change, the countries may change, but end of the day, it's still a pork-based product. So when you think through this lens, the compliance pieces are kind of the white bread components of it, or the wheat bread components of it, or the rye bread components of it, however you want that to land. Almost everybody understands what bread is. Everybody understands what ham is. I couldn't do it, but what is the Arabic equivalent of ham? No idea, but perhaps that's not permitted based on different dietary restrictions, right?
Religious beliefs
matters. That matters, and that's the stuff in the middle, and that's where the planning kicks in. So, what a lot of business owners are familiar with are Subway. You go to Subway, you pick from the menu choices, and you go. So they think, okay, well, my business has got to fit into a Subway model for compliance, and it doesn't. It can fit whatever model you want it to be. I would strongly encourage that you don't create your own custom because it's the most expensive. You do want to use some of those templated formats that are out there. You can create your own accounting system if you want to. You could create your own accounting vocabulary. It's going to have to get translated back to generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, or tax on a return. So maybe just start with the generally accepted principles. So therein lies kind of that, okay, now we got the ham figured out. It can be your flavor. What about the lettuce? What about the dressings? What about the other else? These are your other components that you can kind of layer in there. So businesses that are growing, businesses that might sell, businesses that are in highly regulated industries, a lot of professional services carry a license over the top. They need those compliance-based things. They are the platform for planning. Sometimes like a software company, and one of the things that AI is struggling with right now is AI is parroting back a lot of good information to folks, and it gives us information faster. What if it is giving out copyrighted information? What if it is giving theories that are written in books that's actually someone else's idea? Who has exposure there? And you can start to see that's a different dressing on your sandwich. You probably need copyright attorneys, whereas a guy like me that's a generalist is going to say, I don't know. I don't know how that recipe comes together. So you've got to focus on who you are, kind of what are your core disciplines of your business, and then what are the risks that are out there. I would argue the licensed professions have it easier because their licensing board has told them what they can and cannot do. The software company, for example, sometimes they don't know they've violated the law until the Department of Justice tells them that they have committed an antitrust act and are subject to penalties. All they tried to do was build something that consumers wanted and everybody adopted. Whether that's fair or not, it's a whole different conversation, but that's just the life cycle of different types of companies. And I think you got to know where you are. I would argue, especially in today's world, the future is changing so fast. It would be hard not to have a strategic partner next to you that's paying attention to those changes. Because a guy like you let's pick on me on this one. I already picked on you today, but a guy like me, I've been in calls all day long. I barely know what happened in the press just because there's a ticker tape. There could be a fire down the street from me. I don't know. I'm a business owner too, and that's the blind spots that you're going to want your other advisors kind of feeding info to you to help you navigate whatever that compliance or planning-based hurdle might be.
Oh yeah, as above, so below, and you got the extremities. The brain is nothing without the eyes, without the fingers, without the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the sense of touch. You need these different senses, just like you need these different advisors, and all these senses are housed in one body. So why not have these different advisors housed under one roof? And that's very good, because I like how you described it, because I'm not gonna we all know bread has never been undervalued, right? There are whole dietary plans to help people stop eating bread, right? But the analogy that you used, the white wheat, the wheat, the Italian urban cheese, that's the industry, but what's in the middle matters, is what I heard you say. You got to hold that industry inside that bread, and how big of a bite do you want to take on this sandwich? How much of a risk are you willing to take? Do you want to take a big bite, right? Do you want to only have a grilled cheese sandwich where it's a small bite, but you got all those senses of flavor? Or do you want to pay an absurd amount to take one of those challenges at that restaurant, to where if you finish your sandwich in a certain amount of time, you get the free meal? Meaning that if you're willing to take more risk based off of the knowledge that you receive, are you willing to potentially risk what most people wouldn't for the bigger payout, but being advised by somebody such as yourself along the way? Like, what are these condiments? What are these filling? What condiments should I add? I like that analogy, Chris.
Thank you. Every now and then they hit home, but that one's been one that's carried through. And I also think, like, when you think through risk, and for business owners, a lot of this boils down to numbers. If you are a family man or woman and your spouse is dependent on your income, you're going to behave differently than if you have generational wealth. And so what if you burn $100,000 in Las Vegas today? Those are different decision points, and that's completely okay. You just got to know the facts you're working with. What are our ingredients? What's in front of us? And we'll figure out our sandwich.
Oh, yeah. People like to say knowledge is power. That isn't true. Applied knowledge is power. I can tell you anything. Chris can tell you anything. But if you don't apply the knowledge, it means nothing. Is there no question that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
Probably you've done a really good job with all the questions, but let me throw another one out there. Just one of these rhetorical questions, and maybe you can answer and I'll give an answer and somewhere in there, and hopefully the audience will come up with something as well. But when you think through business, do you show up every day with your goal in mind?
That's a good rhetorical question, and I can answer that question. I definitely do. I have. If you haven't figured out, I'm a big fan of Napoleon Hill, so I have a definite chief aim, as he refers to it, and like he says, we're all subject to what they call hypnotic rhythm, either bad or good. And so, yes, every day I show up with that definite chief aim in mind, and go from there. But I know most people don't. And I think a lot of people that you just posed this question to, they're going to, whether you said rhetorical or not, they would have treated it as rhetorical. They would have changed the subject. They wouldn't answer the question.
And this would be my challenge to the audience. Go write that one down and answer it. And in my case, the story I like to tell is the chief aim might be slightly different day to day or week to week. But let's, NBA Finals kind of went through recently. Let's think our way through that. It was a 7-game series. It was a tough series. Go OKC, because I'm in OKC. Played out for us. But there were definite points in that where you could watch both teams make strategic decisions based on a 7-game series, not a 1-game series. And that's what I think is important with people's intentionality. I think we show up on a Monday to get to 5 o'clock and leave, when in reality, you should be showing up on a Monday, setting up your Friday, or setting up your next Monday, or setting up your next month. And therein lies that power of intentionality by going through there. So I hope that was a fair random question to ask, but it's just subtle, because if you win game 6 at all costs and you lose game 7, you still lost the title. That's tough sometimes. And I don't think people think through the intentionality. We're worried about what's on fire right here, right now, today.
Oh yeah, because when I heard that analogy of somebody preparing for game one instead of all the way out to game seven, I imagined somebody like just comparatively speaking, blowing their load, like just busting a gasket on that first game. And almost, and then you can't, just to put another sports analogy, you can't make it to the championship rounds. I heard this one saying, only a mediocre man can perform at their best 100% of the time. And what that meant was, what the person was trying to say was, you're going to fail. Things are going to happen. However, don't think because you because you failed and then you learned to pace yourself, and you're looking online and see other people seemingly skipping the compliances, seemingly skipping the advised ways to do things, and seemingly getting away with it. However, and it might even seem like every day is perfect for them, but only a mediocre man performs at his best 100% of the time. Once you fail, and then once you realize you need supporting staff, and once you bring on somebody like Chris Papin, I think that's when you say, all right, this isn't just one game series. This is a 7-game series. I know that maybe the advice that Chris told me isn't the advice that I preferred to hear, but I understand that he knows what water is, and he's thinking about game 7. And this is my first time in the finals, and maybe I should listen to him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny as you illustrate that. I think about YouTube, TikTok, Instagram videos. Hey, you want to pay zero in taxes? Everybody wants to pay zero in taxes. How you do it matters. Do you have something left over in the end? Do you wealth build with your decisions? Or do you just spend money? Because if you make $1 million and you spend $1 million, you owe zero in tax. But you don't have any money. Your choice. My sarcastic answer on clients all the time is just give it to me. I'll pay the tax for you. Let me know how much you want to pay us in fees. Nobody's taken me up on that deal before because I think they know my sarcasm by that point.
Hey man, you're a good man, Chris. Hey, thank you so much for the conversation. Please, once again, tell people who you are, what you do, and how they can get in touch.
Yeah, Chris Papin, Papin CPA, Papin Law. The easiest way is probably LinkedIn. Look for my name, last name Papin. Certainly my firm websites, all kinds of good stuff. We're always looking to reach out to small businesses, business owners, and folks that like to have these kinds of conversations. Really appreciate you having me on.
Man, thank you so much for coming, and please feel free to get back on my agenda at any time, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I like your approach of how you help people. Definitely understanding that everyone should have a supporting staff, and it's okay to be a private person to the general public, but you need some people that you know, like, and trust to where you're not so private. You need to be open, because if nobody knows what you're dealing with, nobody can help you. This has been another episode of the Entreprenudist Podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. I am your host, Randolph Love III. I'm so happy to be getting back to doing more of these one-on-one interviews so I can talk more with people like Chris Papin. And so keep it locked. We're going to keep doing it. Once again, the Entreprenudist Podcast. See you on the next one.